I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. Well, hi, and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And we greatly appreciate that you're joining us today. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We do, Renee, and I'm looking forward to today's show and appreciate you all being with us. If you're using or visiting us via Zoom, please use the chat function to interact with us and our presenters. But today we've got Megan Woodland. She's going to be talking about an ever popular subject, mushrooms. Megan's working on her PhD here at UK, and we're just glad to have her as part of the team. Following Megan, we're going to have Doug McLaren. Doug, a former employee, former extension forester here at the UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources Extension, is now the president of the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association, which is a really important organization here in the state. And he's going to be talking about that organization here in just a little bit. And then we have the ever popular tree of the week. And Laurie has got us a presentation on one that's flowering right now all across the state. So stay tuned for that one as well. But I'm glad to have you all with us today.
Yes, we greatly appreciate it. So let's get started. So Megan, if you'd like to turn your camera on.
Hey, how are you all doing today?
Hey, Megan.
Right. So you're going to talk a little bit about some mushrooms.
That's right. Today we're going to be talking about some of the most common mushrooms that you might see here around the state of Kentucky. Now, some of these might be fruiting at different times of the year. These aren't all mushrooms that you will find if you go for a walk in the woods today. But they are mushrooms at certain times of the year, and we'll talk about that seasonal impact you're going to find growing in different parts of the state pretty commonly, and mushrooms that are easy for you to identify. We're not going to focus on any of those really difficult ones where you're counting tiny little features. These are easy mushrooms to identify, and really fun ones to ID too. So we'll take some time and look at a few of those today. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those after we take a look at some mushrooms.
Excellent.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
As always. Renee, I always feel so compelled whenever I see a mushroom. I'm going to take a picture and send it to Megan.
Me too. I do the same thing.
So glad to have her on the team.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about some of the common mushrooms of Kentucky and where and how you can find them. While this is by no means an exhaustive list of all the mushrooms that you might encounter out on your hikes, this does serve as a good jumping off point to learning a little bit more about some of the mushrooms that we have growing here in Kentucky and throughout the Southeast. So I love looking for mushrooms. I love going on hikes and taking pictures of the fungi that I encounter and trying to identify them and learning more about their ecology, the roles that they play in the world around us, and just in general, appreciating the amazing things that these organisms do in nature. So today we're going to be talking about some of the most common fungi that you might encounter here in Kentucky. And we're going to start off with turkey tails. Trametes versicolor, the turkey tail fungus, it is a saprophytic fungus, and it grows on dead and decaying hardwood trees in the fall and winter of the year. It's called turkey tail because of the very distinctive bands and fan-shaped pattern growing on the fruiting body of this mushroom. And that someone at some point thought that it resembled the tail fan of a turkey, and that's where it gets the common name of turkey tail. It is a saprophytic fungus, which means that it grows on dead and decaying material. Saprophytes feed on dead things. They're the cleaning crew, the garbage men of the natural world. And many fungi are saprophytic fungi, like turkey tails are. And so they will only be growing on dead material, logs, stumps, dead trees, where they will fruit in the fall and winter of the year. The fruiting body of the turkey tail, the top surface has those bands of color and it's mildly pubescent. Pubescent means that it has a little bit of a fuzziness to it, almost like a peach fuzz or hairiness. And that's very characteristic of turkey tails. And the underside of that fruiting body is going to be covered in very fine, creamy colored pores on the undersurface of that fruiting body. Unlike a lot of what we think of as mushrooms that have gills, turkey tails have tiny little pores instead. They're polypore fungi, meaning many pored. So no gills, just these tiny little pores on the undersurface of the fruiting body. There are a couple of different fungi that are often called false turkey tails. They don't have these pores, so they'll have gills or maybe nothing at all, no pores, no teeth or gills, nothing on the underside of that fruiting body, just a smooth surface. And that's how you can distinguish true turkey tails with these pores from false turkey tails with gills or other structures. Next up is chicken of the woods. These are Laetoporus species. We have two of them here in the eastern US, Laetoporus sulphureus and Laetoporus cincinnatus. And Laetoporus sulphureus, the name kind of speaks for itself, has this bright orange top surface, and the undersurface of that fruiting body where there are pores, again, it's another polypore mushroom, is going to be this bright sulfur yellow color. It's incredibly distinctive. And Laetoporus cincinnatus, I think of this mushroom as the orange creamsicle of fungi. It has this soft orange top surface, and the undersurface is this creamy white color. The spore-bearing surface is this creamy white. To me, it looks just like an orange creamsicle in color. And those are our two Laetoporus species of the southeast. As I said, Laetoporus are polypore fungi, so they have many pores on the undersurface of the fruiting body rather than gills. These organisms, they do grow on hardwood trees. So here in the eastern US, you will only find them growing on hardwoods. Now, if you go out west to California or Oregon, it's kind of a different story. You might find them growing on eucalyptus or on conifers, in which cases these mushrooms can have deleterious effects to them. But here in the eastern US, they all grow on hardwood trees. The top surface of these mushrooms are orange and yellow, and the underside is either going to be yellow for sulphureus or white for Laetoporus cincinnatus. And these mushrooms are going to be found growing from spring through early fall every year. They have a wide variety of temperature ranges in which they can fruit, and they're pretty versatile. So you'll find them growing even right now up until the early fall. You'll find these fruiting on hardwood trees, on downed logs, or on stumps in forests, and also in urban settings. Maitake, Grifola frondosa, is another polypore fungus that you might commonly encounter. You might have also heard this fungus by another name of hen of the woods. And at this point, we've got turkey tails and chicken of the woods and hen of the woods. There's all this poultry running around. So I prefer to call these fungi by their common name of maitake rather than hen of the woods, just because I think it cuts down on some of the confusion. But Grifola frondosa is the proper name for this mushroom. It is another polypore fungus. You might be sensing a little bit of a theme here. And unlike the previous two, this one can either be parasitic or saprophytic. So it can either be a saprophyte feeding on dead and decaying material, or it can be a parasite living on a host tree that is alive, often on oaks most commonly, although it can also be found on beeches, maples, hickories, and a variety of other hardwood tree species. This is, again, a polypore fungus. So the top surface of that fruiting body is gray to brown and slightly ruffled on the upper surface of the fruiting body. And I think that at some point, someone probably thought it looked like a hen kind of like huddled up at the base of a tree, hence the common name of hen of the woods. But the underside is, again, a pore surface where it's covered in white, extremely small pores. They're very, very minuscule pores, but you can see them under there rather than any kind of gills or teeth. And it will fruit on hardwood trees in the fall of the year. You won't see this one fruiting in the summer or in the spring. It's exclusively a fall fruiter here in Kentucky. All right, this is one of my favorite mushrooms, lion's mane or Hericium species. There's a number of different species of Hericium fungi that you can find in the eastern US. There is Hericium americanum, probably one of the most commonly thought of Hericium species, as well as Hericium corolades and Hericium ericanus. Those are the three species of Hericium we have here in the eastern US. Much like with the chicken of the woods, if you go out west, there are different rules, but here in the eastern US, they tend to grow only on hardwood trees or primarily on hardwood trees. And the multiple species of them will all grow on hardwoods, on downed logs, on living trees occasionally, or on stumps. They are parasitic to mild, they are saprophytic to mildly parasitic. So they can grow on a living host, although they can also grow on a down block, it just depends. And lion's mane are toothed fungi, meaning they don't have gills and they don't have pores. They have all of these teeth. Of course, they're not teeth like an animal has. They're where the spores are born on the fungus, but they are these sort of tooth-like looking structures. All lion's mane fungi are going to be a pure white fruiting body. If you see yellow or brown or other weird colors, then that's a sign that that mushroom is probably well past its prime. But fresh lion's mane will always be pure white. And they fruit from late summer through early winter, depending upon your location. In our area, they're more of an early winter fruiting species, definitely. I don't encounter lion's mane usually before late November to into December, depending upon the weather. All right, this is one that I think almost everyone will be familiar with. Oyster mushrooms or Pleurotus austriatus. This is the first gilled mushroom that we have encountered in this discussion. Much like we think of most mushrooms being gilled, this is a mushroom that is going to have those gills on the undersurface of the cap. There are a number of oyster mushroom species, but we're going to call them all Pleurotus austriatus today for the sake of brevity because it is the most commonly encountered of the oyster mushroom species. This is, again, a saprophytic to weakly parasitic fungus, and it fruits in a wide range of temperatures and seasons. There are many different strains of this mushroom, and they can fruit from early spring all the way through late fall, depending upon the strain. And they're an incredibly versatile mushroom, which is part of what makes them so ideal as a cultivated mushroom for commercial cultivation, because they can fruit in a wide variety of temperatures and under a variety of different conditions, making them pretty ideal for consistent cultivation. The fruiting body on this mushroom can be tan to gray to white on the upper surface. And on the undersurface of this mushroom, you'll see decurrent gills running down from the edge of the cap all the way to the stipe. They will be fruiting on hardwoods or potentially conifers throughout the year here in Kentucky, and they could be living trees or downed logs or stumps. And these mushrooms that get their common name of oyster mushroom because they do have this mildly fishy aroma to them, which leads to that name. The chanterelles and trumpet fungi are linked together here into one group for the sake of this presentation. The Cantharellus and Craterellus groups of mushrooms can all generally be called chanterelles and trumpet fungi, because there are so many different species of them here in the United States. These fungi tend to have pseudo gills. That means they're not true gills. They're not as deep and distinctive as the gills you would see on, say, an oyster mushroom, but rather they're these depressed kind of halfway gills that tend to fork near the margins of the cap. So like a fork in a road, the gills will very often fork near the margins of the caps of these mushrooms. They tend to fruit in summer and early fall, depending upon the species of chanterelle that you're encountering. And they come in a variety of shades, primarily orange and yellow, and grow in either singly or in pairs. You'll never see chanterelles growing in a really large cluster at the base of a tree, more on that in a little bit, but rather in singles or in pairs like this, scattered across the forest floor. These are mycorrhizal fungi. They do require a tree and a symbiotic relationship for their life cycle, and you'll rarely find these growing in town. Rather, you'll almost always find them growing in a forest setting. There are over 46 different species of chanterelles and trumpet fungi in North America, and they come in a variety of sizes and shapes and colors. And not all of them are going to have those pseudogills that we talked about. Some of them are completely smooth on the underside and might even be a different color completely, like these Craterellus phalanx that tend to be black in color and have absolutely no spore-bearing surface at all on the underside of the fruiting body. There's a variety of colors and shapes that they can come in. And here you can see a really lovely example of those forked pseudogills on the undersurface of the cap. There's an incredible diversity of these mushrooms growing in many different environments at different times of the year, and they serve for a fascinating observation. Now, no discussion on common fungi would be complete without a mention of the Morchella genus, the morel fungi. Everyone else wants to know where's the perfect spot to find morels. And, honestly, the answer is that there is no perfect spot. Morels are incredibly elusive. They can be the white whale of mushroom foraging. And today we're not going to talk about where to find morels, just a little bit about how to identify them. And they do have these very pitted, almost cave-like pits all over the surface of the cap. And they will be growing mycorrhizally in association with trees in the early spring of the year. Just when the trees are starting to leaf out is when you're going to find morels growing in woodland habitats throughout Kentucky. Now, just do keep in mind that things aren't always what they seem, and morels are a good example of this. This is the false morel, Gyrometria esculente. People sometimes confuse this mushroom with a morel, and you can sort of see why. There is some vague similarity, although when you look at them right next to each other, they do look pretty different from one another. But every year, people do tend to confuse these, and there are some ways that you can tell them apart. You can see that the true morel has a hollow stipe, whereas the false morel on the right has a lot of fleshy material inside the stem of that mushroom. True morels tend to be detached from the stipe, so the cap isn't attached to the stipe itself. But in the mushroom on the right, the false morel, you can see how that cap is directly attached to the stipe. And true morels have these very deep pits, whereas on false morels, it's a different kind of pitting that they have. But it is very important that you can tell these two apart, because false morels, Gyrometria esculente, have a chemical compound in them that is incredibly similar in composition to rocket fuel. And believe it or not, you cannot digest rocket fuel. So people tend to experience intense gastrointestinal distress from eating these fungi and generally regret the experience. It's important to be able to tell fungi apart and be able to properly identify the fungi that you are encountering, because improper identification can lead to serious consequences. And another example of that is the chanterelle doppelganger, the jack-o'-lantern mushroom. On the right here, it is a species of mushroom that is a parasitic fungus. It grows in large clusters at the base of hardwood trees that it's using as a food source, and it is occasionally confused with chanterelles. However, there are a number of very distinct differences. As we talked about, chanterelles grow either singly or in groups of two, scattered across the forest floor, never in a large cluster at the base of a tree like you see with this jack-o'-lantern mushroom. The interior flesh of a chanterelle, if you sliced it in half, would be pure white, whereas in the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, it is orange all the way through. And finally, we kept on talking about those pseudogills that the chanterelles had. Well, jack-o'-lantern fungi have true gills, those very deep blade-like gills that true fungi have, rather than the pseudogills, the forked pseudogills of the chanterelles. So there are a number of distinctive features that you can use to tell these two mushrooms apart. And it's important that you can, because again, jack-o'-lantern fungi, they're part of what we sometimes call the lose your lunch bunch. They can make you feel very, very ill and have a very regrettable experience. So it's best to avoid them. And no discussion of dangerous fungi in the eastern US would be complete without a mention of the destroying angel, Amanita bisporidgera. This is by far one of the most toxic mushrooms that we have in the US. It is not a member of the lose your lunch bunch. This is a mushroom that can lead to liver and potentially kidney failure and ultimately death without medical intervention. And it's such an innocent looking little mushroom, this pure white, beautiful little mushroom growing out in the woods. And sometimes I wonder if that's part of the reason why it is sometimes a mushroom that people inadvertently consume, because it does look so innocent, and it reminds people a little bit of like the button mushrooms that you buy in the grocery store packaged in plastic, but they are wildly different from one another. And every year there are people who either die or need organ transplants after consuming these mushrooms. So it is incredibly dangerous, and it is something that you need to keep in mind when you're learning about mushrooms and identifying fungi, is how incredibly important it is that your ID is 100% solid. Eating and picking wild mushrooms can kill you. It can change your life in not very good ways. And it's very important to understand what you're consuming if you choose to go that route. I'm of the opinion that I am lucky enough to have access to food when I need it. And there is absolutely no mushroom out there that is worth me losing my vital organs or possibly my life just for some wild mushrooms. So I tend to err on the side of caution and would encourage others to do the same. But it is a very cautionary point to keep in mind. All right, so a few helpful resources to get you set for your mushroom hunting adventures. The great thing about the internet is that you can find anything on the internet. And the worst thing about the internet is that you can find anything on the internet. And that holds true as well for mushroom information. There is a lot of great information out there, but also anybody can post anything they want. And there's a lot of inconsistent or incorrect information out there about mushrooms as well. But these are a few of the online resources that I can 100% say, yes, I trust this resource. They have great information and they are good resources to get you started on your mushrooming adventures. Mushroom Expert is hands down my favorite online resource. Michael Kiao is amazing. He's a fantastic mycologist. His website and the information he provides is extremely thorough and factual. And when I need to identify a mushroom and I'm not sure what it is, Mushroom Expert is the first place that I will turn to for that mushroom's ID or for further information about a species. MycoWeb is similarly a great resource. They are based in California and a little bit more focused on the Western US, but still a fantastic resource for mushroom ID. And then there's Dr. Tom Volk's mushroom website. Dr. Volk is at University of Wisconsin. He is a fantastic mycologist, a great storyteller. And although his website is not regularly updated anymore, he includes a wealth of information about fungi and mycology, and he presents it in a way that's very fun and engaging and keeps your attention and makes you want to keep on reading. So I can't recommend his website enough. Field guides that might prove helpful to you. Mushrooms Demystified is what I would call the Mushroom Bible. This is by David Aurora. It is a truly extensive compendium of information on mushrooms, on mushroom ID, and on mycology. However, it is not a backpack-friendly book. This is a very thick volume, and it's one that's best left at home on your desk to reference when you come back from your hike and are trying to look at your pictures and figure out what that mushroom was, but maybe not so much of a take out in the field with you book. For that, I would recommend Mushrooms of the Southeast. This is very field guide friendly. It has lots of great pictures. And while it's by no means as extensive as Mushrooms Demystified, it is going to be a very helpful place to start and is going to include a lot of the fungi that you might encounter hiking in Kentucky or surrounding states. And All That the Rain Promises and More is also by David Aurora. However, it is almost the complete opposite of Mushrooms Demystified. All That the Rain Promises is a tiny little pocketbook. It is so much fun. It reminds me a little bit of Dr. Volk's mushroom page, where it includes helpful information on ID, although granted that ID is mostly for mushrooms of the Western US. However, there are a lot of great anecdotes and stories and interesting facts and information about fungi included in this tiny little book, and it leads it to be still one of my favorite mushroom books that I can think of. So no discussion of mushroom ID would be complete, I think, without a quick mention about mushroom apps. There's an app for everything, and they can be really helpful and great resources, but I would caution you against using mushroom hunting apps as the final verdict on any ID for fungi. As we've talked about a little bit today, and you might have seen, there's such incredible nuance and diversity in identifying fungi. Not only are there the physical features that you can see, but you have to take into account the site, where the mushroom is growing, the time of year, what it's growing on. There's so much nuance in mushroom ID, and I don't think the apps can really effectively capture a lot of that nuance. So while I think that it's great to use an app for, taking some pictures of fungi to maybe point you in the right direction for the genus or the family that mushroom might belong to, I would very, very much exercise a word of caution against using mushroom hunting apps as the final verdict for any mushroom ID. There's just too much nuance in mushroom identification to really leave it to an app for an accurate ID. And you can also turn to University of Kentucky Forest Health Extension. Dr. Ellen Crocker has a variety of fantastic resources on forest health, invasive species, pests and pathogens, and mushrooms on the Forest Health Extension website. And you can also check out the mushroom webpage that Dr. Crocker and I have been developing. This is a resource from UK on mushrooms and mushroom ID. You can encounter more videos on mushroom identification and mushroom cultivation. And you can check out a variety of resources that we have included on this website, as well as a student blog that some students curated last year with their mushroom IDs from fungi that they encountered in the Lexington area, their identification of those fungi, and interesting information that they found in the course of their research. So I would encourage you to check out the UK mushroom webpage as well. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and happy mushroom hunting. Thanks so much.
I appreciated what you said about the apps. I know a lot of times if we see it on the screen, we just automatically trust it, but that can be dangerous, right?
It can be, and especially with fungi, there's so much nuance. You have to take into account where you are in the world, what time of the year it is, what else is growing nearby, and sometimes minuscule features that your smartphone can't even pick up on. So, those apps can be helpful to kind of point you in the right direction, say, oh, I think this is a Cortinarius or a bolete. But for a species level 100% ID, I would just not recommend it.
Yeah, good advice, good guidance.
I know there was, we've talked about mushrooms on here before with you, and you can have everything from stomach discomfort to possibly death by eating the wrong mushroom. So you really need to know what you're picking out of the forest.
Yeah, you really need to know what you're doing. Even like I've been learning about mushrooms for years. It's something that I find really interesting. And there are still a very, very, like I could count on one hand the different types of mushrooms that I will personally pick and consume. I'm very cautious. It's not worth it to me. I love to see them in the woods, take pictures, learn about them, but I'm lucky enough to be able to have access to fresh food every day. I don't need to worry about possibly hurting myself or other people by picking something that's not edible.
Right. Well, we
Got it.
greatly appreciate you for being on. It was a wonderful presentation. And we'll try to get maybe to get you to re-record it, and we can post it on YouTube for the things that people might have missed.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely do that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Excellent, Megan. As always, appreciate you, and keep up the great work.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Have a good day, y'all.
You too.
Thank you.
So speaking of great work.
Yes, somebody that's been at it for a little while, Doug McLaren. Doug, join us if you can. We wanted to hear a little bit about what you've been up to with the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association.
You're muted.
Right now. Yeah, you're
So
muted.
unmute yourself.
I hit it, but it just didn't write. Okay.
Sometimes it does that. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I retired 7 years ago, and I'm still highly involved in the forestry career and forestry profession and forestry incentives. So it's been a wonderful opportunity, and it's great to be with you here today for this particular subject.
Right. So the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association, you're the current president, and that's a group that's been around for a few years. And I know I've had the pleasure of working with that group for, 15 plus years, and I think a lot of them. Would you tell our viewers a little bit about the organization?
Sure. Can I just go into the slides? Okay. Why don't we just do that? It'll make it a little bit easier, maybe a little cohesive. And then at the end, I'll leave some time at the end where we can ask some of those questions that may have gotten passed by, as you might say.
Sure.
I want the viewers to know that I put this slide set together long before I knew who was going to be on this program. And it was interesting listening to Megan and some of the other things that are happening here. Some are semi-repetitive, but more or less all in the same vein. One thing I did want to say while I share my screen here, and that is congratulations on your 100th show plus. I'm not sure exactly how many you have right now 105 or so, but I know it's been a while. So I think the screen is up. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this is who we are, Kentucky Woodland Owners. Just like Billy said, I'm the current president. It's a one-year term, but what happened was I started that term before the pandemic. And so I felt to keep continuity, I would just keep staying on as chairperson, and nobody has asked me to leave. And so I've been here about 4 years or so, and it's been a wonderful stint. It's a wonderful opportunity, and anybody that takes a position should think about it as taking it for more than 1 year. You just get into it and knowing what's going on. Kentucky Woodland Owners, we have an office. We don't have an office, but we have a mailbox over in Frankfort. We have a website. I'll get to that a little bit also a little bit later, but there's the website down in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you want immediate contact with somebody, the info at KWA will get you somebody on the other end. But basically starting, our mission is simply bringing together people in woodland sustainability. It's that is basically the short end of the stick as to what we're doing. I'm trying to find out how to advance.
Just click on the slide. And then you can, just click.
Yep, there we go. Who we are. Now, I know there's a lot of words there, but basically what it comes down to is we're basically people that have an interest in all the natural resources related to their land. And it can be that their land could be just a quarter of an acre. It could be thousands of acres, but they basically have an interest in the natural resources on that land. And it can be an absentee owner or someone that lives right there on the land. We have what we do, basically, we manage our woodlands, and we do it with the support of state and federal people, as well as programs that are available to us, and also local forestry organizations that we can work with. We do legislative activities, and that is that we are very cognizant as to what's going on in legislation, and we support those items that are important to our landowners. And the last one is simply recognizing that the woodlands have a great contribution to the state's economy. There's a publication that this department, the Forestry and Natural Resources, puts out every year, and that is the economic benefits of forestry. And in the last issue, it says that somewhere between, close to $10 billion of direct cost or involvement. So it is a major, forestry is a major asset to the economy here in the state of Kentucky. $10 billion is nothing to sneeze at. And when you look at all the other aspects, some of the minor ones, it shoots up another several $1 billion also. How do we do this? How do we keep our name recognition? How do we let people know what's going on? How can you interact with this particular organization? Well, here's 3 things right here on the screen. The top left-hand corner is our website. And the way that I get to it real quick is in my browser, I simply type in KWOA space KY. And that directly takes me to the website, and click on that. Or you can fix up your particular app in there and push it that way. That is the website. Let me take you over to the right-hand side, and this is our newsletter that we have. It's a quarterly newsletter. It is not timely, which means when you receive the newsletter, a lot of the things that are in there are things that are historically taken place already. We do make some announcements, but the idea is not for you to get timely information here. It's to more or less summarize the history and historical events that are going on in forestry and natural resources, as well as KWA. And again, it's a quarterly newsletter with membership. And I will say that the most important, well, not the most important one, but another leg to this tripod is the one down in the bottom right-hand corner, and that is the wood post. The wood post is sent out, it's through Constant Contact, and it's sent out a minimum of once a month. And it is the one that brings you up to the current. What is going on currently that you as a woodlander need to be aware of? What programs are going on? What groups are meeting? Where are meetings? What issues are going on? And it's put out at least once a month. The thing that I want to say about the two, the Wood Post and the website, they are done by two individuals who are members and on the board of Kentucky Woodland Association. And I am very, very happy with how this goes on, especially the website. And that is, I've gone to many websites of different organizations. And once you get in there and you find out that it is not up to date, you move on. And I will say that our website is a very timely piece of information. You recognize quickly the things going on in there the website has been brought up to date as quickly as possible. So these are the three ways that we keep in contact with our membership, as well as other people also. I want you to know what the resource here in Kentucky is, and that is 1/2 of the state. 50% of our state is woodlands, is in woodlands. Now, that you will recognize quickly that this particular shot is not taken out in the western part of the state. The majority of our woodlands are in the eastern part simply because of topography. And there are a lot of very valuable forestry assets in the western part of Kentucky. The thing that is so valuable about the forest here in the state of Kentucky is the diversity of species that are found here. We have up to 50 commercially very important species, and walnut and white oak are the two ones that come to my mind just for the industry that they support. But just recognize the fact that Kentucky is a very diversified state in the forestry realm. Now, you'll find out that stories going into the woodlands, these trees have stories to tell. It's a timeless story that goes on from the beginning of that tree and going on until harvest, if the trees are harvested. But there's a lot of stories that are told, and we take the opportunity of doing as many field trips as possible during a year's time, so that we can go into these different forests, different woodlands, and we can look at these trees and find out the stories that they tell. And we have professionals that go with us, and they are the ones that can direct our attention as to, here's the trees, here's the stories that they tell. Here is a woodland, and I just picked out a few stories that could possibly be told about a woodland. Now, this particular woodland that you're looking at right now is not it does not correlate with all the pictures I'm showing, but basically the picture on the left is a woodland site. It could be yours. It could be 1 acre. It could be thousands of acres. But there are so many issues that we need to discuss when we go into any woodland. One of them is, what was the past historical use of that particular land? That has a lot to do with maybe what the species are that exist there now. It has a lot to do with the site quality, the quality of the trees that are growing there, and also the age of the trees. Remember, I mentioned also in the very beginning who we are and what we do as far as Kentucky woodland owners. Some of them, many of them, are absentee landowners. They do not live on the property itself. I can go down through the list and name a lot of the members, and you'll recognize quickly that they are absentee landowners. But again, not only absentee or whether they live on the land, it's what has been the past use of that particular piece of property. We've had some major ice storms in the past that can throw a contundre right into any management plan that you might have. Management plans are written for 20 years out, probably, and the situation is you have a catastrophe come along, not only this ice storm, but the tornado that we had in Western Kentucky. I mean, a landowner has to deal with those things in an instant. And again, we're in contact with those professionals who can help us. These two particular rascals, the turtle, I don't think is going to cause too much of a problem for us. but it is a site indicator. It explains to us where we are in the woods. It explains to us how healthy the forest is. And at the top, we're talking about a varmint that, that's out there. And these are issues that we have to be concerned about, and that is the coyote. So again, those are issues on a piece of land. The next one is, not only do we look at the land surface, what is on the ground itself, but also there's a tremendous number of users of our forest, and migratory birds, small and large, utilize our forest, and it creates a better understanding, a better diversity of our woodlands itself. Again, this is where I said I made the slide set up before, but here's this mushroom, and you remember what Megan said about a lot of these issues. It again is a site indicator of our woodlands, what mushrooms and fungi we find, and how that leads to a better understanding of our forest. And the last one, we have a tremendous number of health issues here in the state of Kentucky, not only Kentucky, but in other states itself. But this is a representation of an insect that created a great deal of problems for us starting in the early 2000s. That's the emerald ash borer. And we constantly, as landowners, have to be looking at these. Also, I want you to recognize the fact that a lot of landowners, woodland landowners, also like to have this meadow effect, and that is, again, diversity. Here's a small meadow, very small in itself, but the thing is it brings in and it attracts a lot of different site indicators, animals of all sizes, insects, reptiles, everything. So it's a diversity within a diversity. And this is what is important to Kentucky woodland owners, to not only just see, but to understand how each one of these affect one another. And that is, when you affect one, you're going to affect another one. The most important thing about our organization is, yes, we get a lot of information out through the website, through the newsletter, and through the wood post. But the most important aspect is the opportunity for us to meet. This is a picture of our annual meeting that we had just a few months ago at the end of March. It was in Frankfurt. It's the first one we've had for a number of years. And this particular one was dealing with wildlife, and it was due to it was a 3-day program, and we had the opportunity to be outside as well as inside. The March program, the annual meeting, usually is venued as an indoor experience simply because we don't know what the weather is. But we have an annual meeting where we have a theme and have a program. And this particular one was in Frankfurt. It was dealing with wildlife, and we went to one of the main attractions was the Salado Center. The other thing that we like to do is to be able to get out. There's a gentleman, one of our members, who actually lives in Texas, and he has been helping us put together a lot of these meetings. And we certainly thank the expertise and the efforts of Steve Perry for putting these programs together. But these programs, again, not only indoor, but we like to get outdoors also. When you get to a woodland, you want to see what is going on there. Each one is different. The management style is different. The issues on each woodland is different. So when you put all those multiple factors together, you're bringing together expertise. Okay. This particular slide right here, there's a lot of reading there, but all I want to pick out of there is that there was a joint House resolution this year, and that was dealing with property tax assessment. The gentleman on the left, Jim Corum, lives down in Harlan, and he has been working for 10 years to get equitable property tax assessment on well-managed forest. And finally, he was able to get some work done this year. And so the university and the Department of Revenue are going to get together and find out, if you manage a piece of property for the woodland component, should you be given a tax opportunity there, delayed taxes, I guess you might say. And so we're going to be hearing more about that. But again, this is one of the things that Kentucky Woodland Owners Association does, and that is we work with a variety of expertise. I want you to recognize the fact that we also support young people. We have scholarships for high school and college students. We have a program that's coming up the first week of June, and there is a recipient of a scholarship from Kentucky Woodland Owners. And what I wanted to mention also is Megan, who was on here just at the beginning. I believe Megan was our very first scholarship at the university level. And she took that money and helped with her educational opportunities. But we do provide educational opportunities for high school as well as college students. Simply showing you here that as a woodland owner belonging to Kentucky Woodland Owners Association, I mean, it's just an automatic magnet to think about, you know, we're going to be looking at woodlands. And that is the thing that we spend a great deal of time on, and all the different aspects of it. But also with those woodlands comes the effect of, you know, what wildlife are there, what potential of life wildlife can be there. And it's a very important aspect that we need to take into consideration. Again, we have the woodlands, but also we have that factor of having wildlife coming into these woodlands, and how does that affect one another. And the last thing that I want to talk about on this particular slide is the forest industry. And you remember I mentioned on the front end of this slide set that the industry here in the state of Kentucky is a $10 billion industry annually. And it is a very important industry. And so we have this relationship between the industry as well as the landowner itself. This last particular slide right here, or at least one of the last few, it shows this flight of some geese going over. And we all recognize the fact that some of these larger birds in migration, they always have a leader. Well, what seems to be a leader, what happens is that leader is there designed to make efficiency. Believe it or not, it actually creates a ebb and flow of the air currents. And so that leader will happen to, he or she will work the front end and then drop off, and another person will come up. And what this comes down to is partnerships. And Kentucky Woodland Owners Association by itself is absolutely nothing. What it is, it's the affluence of the partnerships that we have, especially I'm sitting here at the University of Kentucky, and their partnership is we have these 3 short courses during the summer, and we advertise them heavily. They work with us in every conceivable way to have their program successful and the programs that we do successful. There's a number of state and federal agencies that we partner with, a lot of private organizations, all working with forestry and natural resources. But I want you to recognize the fact that that's what Kentucky Woodland Owners does. We're interested in natural resources. Who are the people that are out there making the day-to-day decisions to help us? And again, partnerships are very important to us throughout our daily works. This one, I realize it says March 2023, which is almost a year away, but I want you to recognize the fact that we're already in the throes of planning a program at Lake Cumberland, and the theme is going to be recreation. I did a program earlier in March. It was a 3-state program, and there was one there, a person on trails, and he did a fabulous program, and a lot of people attended it. So we're doing a program on recreation, which will be in March of 23. So visit our website and check for updates on the dates and the times of that. Again, this is the last slide, and this is the slide that we started with, and this is Kentucky Woodland Owners logo. This is what we do, and that is we manage woodlands in every way, shape, and form. And basically, it's bringing people and woodland sustainability together. So again, it's been a wonderful opportunity to be with you today. And if there were any questions out there, I'm going to stop sharing here. If there's any questions out there, I'll be happy. I just have a few minutes left, but if there's no chats, I don't see any. So Billy or Renee, any questions for me? Things I left out?
What I would like to say is a big thanks to you, Doug, and the entire organization. You did mention you all are our lead sponsor for the Kentucky Woodland Owners Short Course. And because of your all's generous contributions, we're able to keep those fees very, very reasonable.
Right.
So I just wanted to acknowledge you all, publicly, and thank you for that. And, not only do you all provide financial support to that, you also influence and help shape the programs that we do. So it's a great organization. I would encourage all woodland owners in the state of Kentucky to become a member, and because it's a great group that's working really hard to try to support woodland owners in the state. So please, if you are a woodland owner, please consider joining them and supporting their efforts, because it's going to benefit all of us, and especially you as a woodland owner.
Yeah, there's about 400,000 landowners now. That's anything from a couple acres up to thousands of acres. But there's probably over 100,000 landowners that, that have 20, 30, 40, 50, 1,000 acres. And we don't have that many in the membership. And the more influence we have with the more people that are involved, and also to get the value of our forest up by being involved.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And a big thanks again to all of the board members and all those others that do so much volunteer work. I want to remind people that when you do pay your dues to the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association, it's not going in their pockets, right?
No,
They are volunteering their time and their resources to try to serve woodland owners. So please rest assured that your membership dues are being well used.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Doug.
you, Doug. We
Good
greatly
to be here.
appreciate you being on. Great show.
Those mushrooms that Megan covered, pretty cool. And
They are
remind
definitely cool.
folks that we do have mushroom resource page that Megan and Dr. Crocker have been working on. So it's a great resource for you. And again, if you're a woodland owner, please consider joining the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association.
Right, definitely. And any of our topics that we talk about, we do list them on a website called fromthewoodstoday.com, and you can get all of the past shows there. You can actually even request a show if you'd like.
Yeah, no doubt. So, we appreciate you all being with us, and let us know what you want to see. What are you seeing out in your woods? If you see something cool, you can submit a picture on that little survey form from thewoodstoday.com, and then we can take a check or check it out and maybe help you with identification, or it may be the topic for a future show.
We've already got several people that have actually submitted topics, and I'm working on getting lining up guests for those. So you never know when your show idea might be on our live show.
Yeah, no doubt. So Renee, it looks like we ran out of time for the tree of the week, but we will try to circle back on that next week. But again, thank you all for being with us this week. And please let others know about the show and encourage them to check it out. If you can't check it out live, check us out on YouTube or on fromthewoodstoday.com.
All right. Until then, we'll see you next week at 11. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
From the woods today.